welcome to the GAB Talks by the Independent Press Award. I'm your hostess, Gabby Olzak. Today, we will be chatting with John Albedo, author of the trilogy Rainbow Chronicles. Nutshell, book one of the trilogy, earned a distinguished favorite in the 2022 New York City Big Book Award for General Fiction. In his alter life, Albedo is known as Dr. Alan Birch Hollingsworth, a retired breast cancer specialist and history enthusiast. Prior to 2001, Hollingsworth focused on scientific writing. His first fiction novel, Flat Bellies, is a critically acclaimed coming-of-age story. His next writing adventure, Killing Alan Birch, Alan delved into a true crime account of his grandfather's murder in 1920s racially charged Oklahoma. Nutshell and book two of the trilogy, Cannibal Club, were released in May 2021 under the pseudonym John Albedo. Alan received an MD with distinction from the University of Oklahoma College of Medicine. He lives in Oklahoma City, where he continues to consult with numerous companies to help introduce new breast cancer screening technology. And of course, for that, we are very grateful. Alan, thank you. Congratulations and welcome to the GAB.
Thank you, Gabby. Happy to be here.
Wonderful. So, okay, first things first. Why did you choose to publish the Rainbow Chronicles under the pseudonym John Albedo? And what's the significance of the name? Let's get it out of the way.
Yes, we do need to get it out of the way.
Yep.
It was a tough decision because I already had a readership built in from two prior novels. And but this one, on the first count, this story, I borrowed true events and changed them accordingly, but there were quite a few events and misadventures that were true. And I felt I needed to distance myself a little bit. And we know a pseudonym is not a big secret. You can't keep it a secret, but it's just to a psychological distancing between myself and the stories. And then so that was the main reason. And then secondly, I had this readership from Flat Bellies and the sequel to that book, University Boulevard, and that there were expectations of me writing that coming of age story type thing, a little bit more lighthearted. And this was such dark fiction that I decided to put the trilogy under the umbrella of a pseudonym.
Okay, that makes sense to me. Another bigger question is, okay, so you are a renowned breast cancer specialist. What inspired you to delve into fiction writing, and where, most importantly, did you find the time? Couldn't have been easy.
It took a long time because it was spread out over weekends and time off, which wasn't very often. But I got some early inspiration from actually kind of rode the coattails of my mother, who was getting her master's degree in journalism many years ago, and she had her professor, buttering up the professor, had him over to dinner at our house because he was writing a medical book and there was a father-son combination, and he was pleased to come over. And I told her of a plot I had, and she said, "Why don't you share that with Jack?" This was Jack Bickham, taught novel writing at OU. And I shared the plot with him, and he dropped everything and said, "I will co-write that with you. That's such a great, unique plot." And so my little brain was saying, "Whoa, if it's that good, I'm going to do it myself." And started going to writers' conferences and actually came very close to a big success with this because it was so long ago. There was no such thing as a medical thriller. And I wrote this book, and Jack Bickham looked at it like a year later and said, "I've really never seen a first novel half this good." And this is a guy that's teaching novel writing at OU. So he didn't tore it apart. He just spent multiple pages telling me what was wrong with it. But I got a similar feedback from someone else, and I took this manuscript. It went from the slush pile to a big Hollywood agent. We were talking all sorts of things, and I was in surgical training at the time.
Wow.
In my 20s, so my head is spinning. Then a book, Robin Cook's Coma, came out, and my story was the same thing. I was just a little bit too late, and everything just collapsed. So I lived in Los Angeles. I spent the next 10 years going to writers' conferences, learning the craft, trying to pitch my story. I figured, we can change this a little bit and make it different from Coma. And amazingly, never got the attention, never was even published, in spite of 10 years of effort. So at the end of that, I'd picked up quite a bit of knowledge about creative writing, going to all these writers' conferences.
I bet.
And taking the periodicals and reading Writer's Digest and other things. So finally decided I had to give up where I'm going to start. And I decided to go with fiction, a story that was based on characters, not plot. So
this was Flat Bellies.
This was Flat Bellies.
Okay.
And that then, much to my surprise, because I wrote it kind of as a writing exercise, and much to my surprise, it took off. It's really the best-selling novel I've had, made a national impact. We had USA Today reviewing it. We had top 10 golf books of all time by a panel of East Coast sports writers. We have constant movie options. Unfortunately, it's not made it yet to the screen, but I'm currently negotiating the 4th TV movie option right now, see if we can't finally get it launched. But that was a thrill, having a book like that. It's what writers dream of. So anyway, to answer your question, I didn't have much time. And at the end of Flat Bellies, they wanted a sequel within 1 year, and that was a difficult task. And that was University Boulevard. And then I started in on the current Rainbow Chronicles, 3 books, sort of writing all of them at the same time. And it took me many years to get a rough draft down. And it was just the thing that you would imagine, the weekends and nights and a lot of time sacrifices. Had to actually give up golf myself. And
which is really what Flat Bellies was based on.
Right.
Golf story, right?
Yes,
Well, you kind of started in my next question was, you had an interesting method of writing the trilogy. You researched and wrote the books, as you just mentioned, all 3 books kind of as one entity. Tell us about that process. How did you do that?
Right. It was very difficult. I had to research brain physiology and anatomy a lot, but also went to West Texas and researched that area and then started outlining. And what I wanted was a fun, even though it's dark fiction, I wanted it to be a challenging read where readers that were paying attention could look at foreshadowing that pops up later in books 2 and books 3 in just a maze of ciphers, so to speak, just to make the reading a challenge and enjoyable for readers. So I had this the whiteboard and lots of diagrams on what's happening. And then the 3 books were evolved at the same time, sort of different viewpoints. We start off with an omniscient viewpoint for number 1. The protagonist takes over in book 2 as he's going mentally wacko nuts.
Yeah.
Part of the process. And then in book 3, I have a brand new character who looks at the whole process, and we go by his viewpoint. But just building on it, it was the hardest part was rewriting and revisions, because I'd have to think, okay, now if I change that here, I've got to find it in book 2 and book 3 and make all the proper changes there. So I think I got all the anachronisms and everything out. So I'm waiting for somebody to start pointing out the errors, but so far I haven't heard any.
Yeah, I want to get to that methodology that you used and puzzling everyone, because it is interesting. But let's circle back to Nutshell. I want you to tell us a little bit about it. You said you describe it as the making of a surgeon with a design flaw. So tell us about that, and then I'd like to hear a little bit about the overall theme of the trilogy.
Basic premise is a medical student, pre-med student, thinks he's going to be a psychiatrist, working in a mental institution as an orderly, happens to see a surgical procedure. There's a full service hospital on the mental institution campus, which is based in reality that we had here in Oklahoma. And he gets to look in on this surgical procedure, and the patient is cured literally with one snip of the scissors of an intestinal obstruction. And he's so impressed that you can get a cure like that he changes his entire life plans and decides to become a surgeon. What he doesn't know is that patient ended up with a complication as a result. And the patient actually died. The reader knows that, but he doesn't know it. And that's the warning that things are around the corner, and that psychologically he's not a good fit for surgery, especially when it means overdoing or overachieving what his father had done. And so then he begins kind of self-destructive behavior in spite of being absolutely outstanding professionally. Privately, his life starts to wither. This is countered by a guardian angel type character who's an inpatient at the mental institution named Ivy Pettibone. She had multiple birth defects when she was born, kind of a fascinating combination. But the thing that distinguished her was her language. She had her own language and got misdiagnosed as schizophrenia and ends up in this mental hospital, even though she has no mental illness, but unable to form any other words that other than her own language. She gets this label, and she and Chase Calloway, the protagonist, become friends, and their lives intertwine, and he helps her get some correction of some of her birth defects. And this process, it leaves open the possibility of maybe some metaphysical influence here, that she is, in fact, a guardian angel sent to kind of protect him and assist him. So there's a lot of symbolism that prepares you for the next books. But basically, Ivy's story is predominantly in this first book of the trilogy. And I've had much feedback. Everybody wants to know if Ivy's a real patient. And she is based on a person that I encountered in when I was an orderly in the mental institution. But I spent a lot of years there as an aide, and then as a surgery trainee, an intern, and a surgery resident, and then a surgery faculty member. They had this full service hospital. You rotated down there and operated on the patient population that was in the mental health system in Oklahoma.
Oh, that's fascinating. That was my next question. I was wondering, as a breast cancer specialist, what challenges you faced during your research and writing about Nutshell, in particular Ivy, but you had firsthand experience. You worked in, I didn't realize that. That's very interesting. So you actually did have that interaction on the surgical side, but in a mental institution.
Correct.
Wow, that's really very, very interesting.
It was a very strange, full service hospital, laboratory, medical, ICU, surgery, entirely it was both for mental health and prisoners in the Oklahoma system. So you can imagine the number of stories that come out of something like that.
Oh, you were inspired on a daily, I would imagine.
Yeah. I was ready.
Tell us about this relationship between the two protagonists, Ivy and Chase. That it's really special, and it's really from day one, isn't it? When they meet,
right? And there's the immediate bond is her playing the piano, but has this one of her birth defects are webbed fingers called syndactyly, where she can't really play the piano, but he sees that and tries to help her get the surgical repair needed, even though she's in her 40s by the time he meets her. This becomes a quest for him to get somebody to come fix her fingers that should have been done years earlier. And their friendship then evolves as he teaches her a song. He's actually a part-time songwriter as well. And so he teaches her a song and the lyrics to the songs, which all have symbolism for down the road as well. But they bond at the piano and with music. And that persists throughout the story until I don't want to give away much more, but they form a clear bond that is unusual for something like that to happen with an aide and a patient, or later a surgery resident and a patient.
I could only imagine. So, Alan, you said, you were quoted as saying, "I decided to weave puzzle pieces everywhere so that readers who like a challenge could put the puzzle together." A lot of symbolism and foreshadowing, as you said. And I noticed, and I know a lot of your readers have noticed this, chapter 2. Tell us about chapter 2. It focuses on the genealogy of one of the earliest protagonists, Zeb Calloway. So what's the significance of the chapter?
I wanted to have the entire story, all three books, interpreted as the reader wants to, either a lot of quirky coincidences or some sort of metaphysical influence that's sort of making this happen. And so I walked this razor's edge trying to make it this way. And that meant some careful planning, part of that big outline that took me so long, but also things like Chapter 2, which is a series of 12 vignettes on 12 generations of what could be a 13-generation curse, of which my protagonist is number 13. So,
right.
and it is each little vignette, short vignette about that particular Callaway is a foreshadowing that there's a theme in that vignette that's going to be played out in the regular story. And so today's readers are just go drive, push the plot. But this is, I call it an overture. It's the only chapter with a title in that book. I call it an overture because it's telling the reader, these are the different themes we're going to encounter now, the rest of the book.
So how would you recommend our listeners read the trilogy? I feel like Nutshell can be read independently, but what about the other books?
Good question. Nutshell can be. It's the only one that stands alone. And even though there is a little bit of cliffhanger at the end, because Chase is headed to trouble, you just get this feeling. But still, the plot itself is tied up in the single book. But the other two books do not stand alone, and that's too bad. It's just the way it worked out. But I tell people, really, you don't want to start with the second book. I put a little refresher at the beginning of it to kind of, but it's really for people who've read number one to refresh their memory.
I love that. Yeah.
It's really not enough to make somebody want to read the story. I think it's really a refresher. And then by the time we get to book 3, it is possible. I know people who like to read the ending of a book and they won't even read the book till they read the ending. And I think you have that possibility. Someone could read book 3 if they go back and pick up 1 and 2 and probably reread number 3 afterwards. I mean, if you really enjoy lots of little subtleties, I think people are going to have fun when they see some weird thing happening in the mental institution 2 books ago now comes to fruition in book 3.
Yeah, book 3, Heavenly Blues, will be released February 2023. So you touched on it a little bit, but what is unique about Heavenly Blues in relation to the other two?
It is written in first person by a completely different character that's only made brief appearances in book 1 and book 2. We know him, but we don't know him well. And all of a sudden, he starts the whole process over with his own agenda, his own problems. And that has to deal with a fortune that his father had, that the father donates to the medical school for cancer research on a particular research agenda that is nonsensical. And the money, and this actually came from an event that happened when I was in academic medicine. We had a big donor, but he said, you have to use it for cancer research for this in particular, which was basically nonsense. And so that I use that as a springboard for this character, Will Glendenny, who's now living bi-coastal and dropped out of medical school. And he has to come home back to Texas to figure out how they're going to handle this money. He and his mother figure out what kind of foundation they're going to start. And in the process, they stumble across a few things that make them want to investigate the life of Chase Callaway. So it starts off as a retrospective and then ends up being, I liken it to Heart of Darkness, where he goes in search of answers. And so suddenly we're in this one plot, and now we're going to resurrect the plot that was in books 1 and number 2 about Chase Callaway, and then culminates with a revelation for the reader, followed by an appendix. Really, before the appendix, I have a little epilogue, and as I did in Flat Bellies, the story turns upside down in the epilogue, and readers get a completely different viewpoint of what has happened, what they've read about, and this is just part of the fun of writing.
It is
and
fun.
I think people are going to really enjoy this 5-page epilogue. Then attached on there is an appendix of Chase's writings back when he was mentally deranged yet still a medical genius. And the appendix doesn't even need to be read, but I put it in there as a kind of a tribute to the writer that I most admired getting into this, which was Michael Crichton. When I read Andromeda Strain before it was ever a movie, and when I saw that he was a Harvard medical student, Harvard intern, I thought, what makes Andromeda Strain so appealing, he made you think it was real with all this supplementary information about computers, and there were diagrams of computer printouts. And so to me, it's my appendix that I stuck on at the end, which actually were my notes that I was using to write book 2, and the crazy associations that actually turn out to be something between Chase Calloway, the genius, and Chase Calloway, the madman. So
I love it. It gives us a little peek into the creative genius behind the trilogy. I think it's awesome. I know our listeners are dying to know, because that's part of the fun too. What percentage of the stories are from real life?
In book 2, it's pretty heavy.
Really?
Yeah, book 2 is pretty heavy, and then book 1's maybe 50%, and then book 3 is almost all fiction.
Okay, so is there something about Rainbow Chronicles that would surprise your readers and listeners?
I think that the surprise is not knowing what to expect. The publisher didn't even know what genre to put this into. They started off.
It could fall into a few for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and there was, is this a medical thriller? And I said, no. Is it a psychological thriller? Well, not really. It's a psychological study, but it is. I think the unusual part is that people say, "Oh, medical fiction's been done; it's been beat to death." But the unusual thing here is the metaphysical aspect of faith and watching it being chipped away in book 2. I say book 2 is the deconstruction of a surgeon. Book 1's the construction. Book 2's deconstruction of a surgeon. The study there, and there's not many times that medical education is mixed with faith, just kind of generic faith in a providence. And most of the time it's not even mentioned. But here it's really a main feature. And you said we were going to talk about the theme, and the theme, even though most of it is medical, the theme is the persistence of faith, even though it's chipped away bit by bit until there's nothing less but that old grain of mustard seed. So it is. It doesn't take up a lot of space in the number of pages I devote to it.
But that's the overall theme of it.
It's the right. It's the overall subtle theme, right?
So, Alan, you're a doctor. You're an author. What inspires you?
That's a tough one.
Yeah.
I think in the doctor world, what inspires me is improving screening,
which you continue to do.
Yeah, which I'm still working on, coming from multiple angles. But then in the writing world, I don't know, honestly. I think a lot of it is therapy. And it's a lot cheaper. It's a lot cheaper to write than pay a psychiatrist to hear those same words come out in a session. So I think a lot of it is a release, an emotional release. And I think for people who read book 2, they know what I'm talking about when I say that, well, quite a bit of it happened. None of it happened exactly like I wrote it, but by the same token, I've borrowed from actual events, and really, I think the big part of that was the emotional release, and that really applies to the inspiration for this trilogy, because my early books were really more for fun. And I really just did that enjoyable experience of writing about my buddies in high school, and what a thrill. They had flat belly golf tournaments, flat belly reunion. It's been a topic people still approach me today about it. And it was just so much fun. I couldn't describe it. So after that, I was hooked. I've never had as good of success as Flat Bellies, but by the same token, it entered me into this world of writing, which has been a great experience.
So share with us, I know you're working on something really exciting right now in relation to Flat Bellies, and you seem really thrilled about it.
Well, it's been amazingly, it's been 22 years since it came out. And I want to do a 25th anniversary edition and kind of give the story about the story because the Flat Bellies idea came to me at a single moment in time as if I was at my godson's high school graduation, which was at my high school, with my best friend growing up. And I was thinking, the graduations can be kind of boring. And I was wondering and thinking, I got to give up on that medical thriller thing and start something new. And it's got to be character based. And I thought, I think I'll do a play or like a play where it's just 9 holes of golf, and I'll practice characterization. Because my good friend here, we had been on the golf team together, and I think I'll just do that, and it'll be a good practice for characterization. And then it grew from there, and started thinking, well, I could have this plot and that plot feature and that, and it got bigger and bigger until I had this novel, and it was so much fun for everybody involved with it, and almost. I came that far away from dropping out of medicine because it was so.
I read
fun.
that was shocking.
and so, it just was from beginning to end. So I thought, well, I'll for the 25th anniversary, I will tell the story behind the story as a preface and say how the book came about, the odd circumstance. I have a friend who my best friend's wife, and she took a picture of us at that graduation, and she has put it online before and said, "This is the moment. This is the exact moment Flat Bellies was created."
Wow.
so it was out of boredom at a graduation, but it was just so much fun for so many people, and I'm hoping that this fourth option for TV and movie will come through and actually make it to the green light stage, which we've never made before, and that would be the icing on the cake for me. Would be to help that. So I'm trying to. An ulterior motive with the 25th anniversary version is we have a whole new generation of filmmakers out there now. Yeah. And Oklahoma's getting very active in the film industry. And so I'm hoping somebody picks up on it. If this current option being negotiated doesn't go through, then hoping somebody picks up on it and runs with it.
Well, so do we. That'll be really great to see. And we look forward to that 25th edition. That'll be fantastic. Alan, this was a lot of fun. And thank you so much for speaking with us today. Where can our readers and listeners find out more about your work and purchase your books?
I have I have 3 websites, but I have The Murder of My Grandfather is actually a separate website, and that's killingalbertbirch.com. I have a general medical author website that's my name, alanhollingsworth.com, and that's ALAN, Hollingsworth. But the trilogy, I've separated into its own website with my pseudonym. And so that one is John Albedo, ALBEDO, all one word. It's just www.killingalbertbirch.com, each of these, alanhollingsworth.com, and then johnalbedo.com. And John Albedo, I don't know if I said before, the albedo is a physics term for reflection. It's a unit of reflection. And then John
which ties into the whole theme of the trilogy. Fantastic. Right. Fantastic. Well, we look forward to it, and we really hope that it does make it on the screen this time because it is a great story. Alan, thank you so much for joining us today. Join us next time to chat with Cheryl Lafferty-Eckel, author of Reflections on Ineffable Love. This is Gabby Olzak of the GAB Talks. Until next time, keep reading. Thanks, Alan.
Thank you very much, Gabby.